What's up, YouTubers? Johnny DIY here. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to install laminate flooring. If you guys are new to my channel, do me a favor and click the subscribe and the bell so you can get all my new videos. Alright guys, let's get to it. Alright, so here's the tools we're going to need. We're going to need a saw, tape measure, a little pry bar, a couple hammers, regular, and a mallet. Some knee pads for sure, eye and ear protection. And then you're going to want to pick up one of these installation kits for flooring because it has this special tool we're going to need to pull the flooring together. I'll go ahead and put some links down in the description to all the tools and also the specific flooring I'm using if you're curious to know that. Alright, the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to pry off our baseboards all around. You can get away with leaving your baseboard if you really didn't want to. You need to buy some quarter round. And then what you would do is you would put that over the gap after installing the floor. I'm going to go ahead and remove mine. And then we're also going to need to remove any sort of transitions to any adjoining rooms because these things are just going to get in the way. So go ahead and pry these all up and remove these. We're also going to want to go around the edge of the whole entire room and check for any staples or nail heads that are popping up and go ahead and remove all those for maybe tack strip or something like that. Then we're going to want to sweep up and get the floor really clean before we lay down the flooring. Alright, so before we start laying the laminate flooring, you're going to want to decide which way you want to lay it. If you're going to do the whole house, it's best to lay it straight from the front of the house running to the back of the house like this. But if you're not doing that, go ahead and lay it parallel to the longest length of the room. That's going to give you the least amount of waste and you're also going to be able to lay it down faster. Or you're going to want to match the same direction from some other rooms in the house. Okay, so the flooring I'm using today has the underlayment already attached to the bottom of the plank. But if yours doesn't, you're going to want to roll out your underlayment. You just roll it out, and it's best to roll this out perpendicular to the direction that you're going to be putting down the floor. But it's easy, you just roll it down, and it's got some sticky tape you stick to each other. It's easy peasy. Next we're going to measure the width of the room. And you're going to want to divide the width of the room by the size of the plank size. What that's going to give you is how many planks is going to be across your floor. You don't want to end up on the opposite side of where you started and end up with a tiny little board like this. So it would be better to cut the first row in half. You would have the start and the finish. A nice good meaty size of board. Okay, and it's best to leave your laminate stacked up in your room for a good 24 to 48 hours to let it acclimate to the temperature and humidity of the room. Okay, so laminate flooring uses a tongue and groove system. So here's a nice clean shot. Here on the left, that is the tongue, the smaller one. And here on the right is the groove. See, it has the little slot grooved in. It's a little deceptive because it does have a bigger piece right here. You'd think that was the tongue, but it's the side that has the little slot grooved into it. We're going to want to start the first row. We're going to start in the left corner of the room, and we're going to want to start with the tongue facing the wall. We're actually going to go ahead and cut this tongue off because we don't need it. Okay, and when we start, we're going to want to use some spacers. I just use cutoffs of the wood, and we're going to want to space it between the wall on both sides, or all sides actually, because we need an expansion gap for the wood to expand. If you don't leave it, it'll end up buckling in the middle and it'll bubble up. And when we join board to board, you're just going to put the small tongue into the end. You just put it in at an angle, and then drop it. And it's also worth noting that walls usually aren't straight, so don't just go by the wall to guide you for your first course. If you truly want a straight line, go ahead and get a snap line and snap a chalk line so you'll have a nice straight line. And when we grab the planks, go ahead and mix the planks up from each box so that you have a nice random pattern. Then when you get to your doorways and molding, you're going to have to cut this. I got a separate video on that. Alright, now when we cut this, we're going to want to cut the face of the laminate. Just give it a couple taps with the mallet, and then it'll lay more flat. Alright, now I'm ready for the next piece, and I left an expansion gap here and also space for the T-mold bracket. I've got a separate video on molding, check that out. Alright, so we just lay it in. Go ahead and use a scrap or your tapping block that came with your kit. Give it a few taps. until this gap's nice and tight. Okay, and when we get to the last plank of each row, go ahead and put our expansion gap spacer on the wall. And we're actually going to flip the plank around the opposite way, line it up with the wall. And then we can come back to here where we need to cut it, and we'll just make a little tiny mark there. And since we flipped it around, now we're going to have the right length to cut off on that side. And at the end of the row, this is where our special tool is going to come in handy. We just hang it over the edge. We use this edge to tighten it up. Go ahead and lay your boxes on the end of each course. That'll help it from shifting around when you're installing the first few courses. Okay, now on our second course, we're going to want to start off with half a plank. We don't want our joints to line up. You're going to want a good 6 to 8 inches between joints at least. And we're not going to start off with any boards shorter than 8 inches. Just scrap those ones. Give it a few taps. Alright, so then it just becomes pretty repetitious until you get to those doorways and such. Alright, now when you're using your hammer and your tap block or your scrap piece, go ahead and give it just short little taps, because you don't want to end up marring up this edge, because the edges of the laminate are pretty delicate. So the key is to line up the side as close as you can, so that when we tap it in, we only have to go a little bit. Okay, now when you've got a more complicated cut, it's best to use a jigsaw. You can get by with a handsaw, but this thing makes it a lot easier. Okay, when you get to these complicated cuts that you need to go around door jambs and such, go ahead and get yourself a piece of cardboard from the box and cut it out and make a template. And then what you can do, you can just trace it on so you get the cut perfect to the way you want it. It's a lot easier to visualize it with the template. Now once you get around the doorways and hallway areas, it becomes really easy when you're just doing a straight cut at the end. Then on this last row of the wall, we're going to cut off the big fat part of the groove end. Okay, now before we finish up this last row, a quick tip. Make sure you buy a couple extra boxes. Number one, so you don't run out. And number two, you're going to run into damaged boards. They're going to be chipped, or the tongue or the groove could be damaged, and no matter how hard you try, it's not going to fit right. So do yourself a favor, stack those aside, make a box work, and then return them to the store, tell them they're damaged, and get your money back. And you're going to get a nicer finish, and you're not going to deal with the headache of trying to use a damaged board. Last one. Alright guys, and here it is all done. I just finished up putting the trim on, and around the fireplace I did some trim. Then I did a little oak wood threshold right here between the two rooms. It came out pretty nice though, guys. Hopefully you guys liked this video and something helped you with it. If it did, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe and click the bell so you can get all my new videos. Alright guys, thanks for watching Johnny DIY. Keep on doing it yourself. Take care.